All right. What's up, brothers? Welcome to Black Man Lab. We got the brothers in the house, man. It's good to be back. I've been kind of on the fringe, man. I haven't been able to rock with everybody lately. Just ripping and running, but it's been beautiful. Good to see Brother Fred, Brother Marty, Brother Jared, Mo, Maurice, and our special guests who are about to just bring this knowledge around voting. I have a relationship with almost all of these brothers. We're looking forward to hearing you all's voices, man. We need you all. It's right on time. A little bit of background about Black Man Lab. Normally, when it's not a pandemic, we get together physically. And we are at the Andrew and Walter Young YMCA. Some of you all have been in that space. We link up. We usually start out by asking brothers if they've had the kind of day or the kind of week that they need some love and support. A brother will come up and then the men will gather around him and give the brother hugs and love. And so I know that there's a brother probably amongst us with the passing of the great Dr. C.T. Vivian and John Lewis, who feels like we could use a little extra energy and love. So let's just do that to each other, just show each other that love, because we got these ancestors, man. They have become ancestors. And so we just give thanks for them. And I know we'll have a libations, a Black Man Lab libation in a moment, but just couldn't move forward without acknowledging their work, their sacrifice, especially with a subject like this on voting. I mean, C.T. Vivian, they took blows. They got beat down for us to have the right to vote, physically assaulted, you know, so that's just real. So I want to flip it over to my brother from another mother. He is here now, rocking hard, Brother Marty, and then you can move us, and then let's get into it.
All right, brother. Thanks, Brother Molly, man. You're absolutely right. This is a great topic for us tonight. I'm really looking forward to us being able to dig deep on this subject matter as it relates to voting and the importance of it. As you said, when you talk about these giants in the civil rights movement that have moved on to become ancestors, we have to really think about and appreciate and acknowledge all the work that they did to get us to at least where we are today. You know, we're at a point right now where we are in a place where we can move forward and do some really significant things to change the tenor of the future. So looking forward to this conversation. One of the things that we do at the beginning of every session is we look to get centered. And there's two parts to that. One, we want to make sure that we are getting centered within ourselves, but then also making sure that we're touching on our ancestors, the shoulders that we stand on. But with that, what I want to do is firstly, I want to bring on Brother Fred Parham, my man who has been hosting with me for the past couple of weeks. And it's just been a joy to be with here on this panel. Today, I'm going to have Brother Fred bring us in and get us centered. Brother Fred, if you could.
Absolutely, man. Great Monday evening, brothers. And certainly good to see Miley back in the co-host seat. I was getting used to it, Miley. I thought I had a fan club, bro. Man, shout out to all of the 21-year-old and unders who's tuning in tonight, man. This is so important that you guys are the strength and energy of the community. So, you know, as Miley alluded to, we've got rituals in the lab, man. And one of those is for us to try to leave at the door when we were at the Y, all of the challenges and burdens that we often silently carry on our shoulder throughout the day. And so one way we can do that, or continue to do it virtually, man, is we can be mindful and remember our breath. And so to center ourselves, being aware of our breath, actually establishes presence and establishes a state of mindfulness. And so in so doing and keeping with ritual, everybody on 3, 2, 1, exhale, let your shoulders fall. Again, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, let your shoulders fall. All right, stay with us, man. Tune in for a great show. Back to you, Marty.
Thank you, Brother Fred. Next, I want to bring on one of our other brothers, Brother Jared Grant, who will bring us into the space of our ancestors. Brother Jared.
Man, thank you, Marty. Thank you, brothers. Happy that you're here. We're excited about today's panel and very important message. We like to bring, as ritual, we bring in our ancestors at the beginning of every panel discussion. You know, we have ancestors that came before us who helped make their mark on the world, and we want to remember them and we want to capture them in our memory. So I want you to think of some of those international ancestors, those beyond just these borders that have impacted the lives of African people. So take a few seconds to just remember them in your mind, lock them in your mind. And then on the count of three, everybody say Ashe. 1, 2, 3. Ashe. Black shift. Ashe.
Ashe.
And now I want us to think of those national ancestors, those within the borders of which we live in, that have had a special mark inside of our hearts and minds. Think of some of those national ancestors and lock them into your hearts and minds. And 1, 2, 3 with your fist. Ashe.
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 Right. I want to give special tribute, as Maoli alluded to earlier, to very special ancestors who lived in our city, right here in Atlanta, John Lewis and C.T. Vivian. So let's give a special ashe to those brothers and lock them into our hearts and minds, for they have now entered into the ancestral realm. 1, 2, 3.
Ashe.
Ashe. And lastly, let's bring in those ancestors in our hearts and minds that actually created you, the individual, which is you, your family line, your blood, who created you and have now entered the realm of the ancestral realm. So think of those before you who created you. Lock them in your hearts and minds. On the count of 3, we'll say Ashe 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Ashe.
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 Ashe. Thank you, brothers. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you, Brother Grant. Appreciate it. Hey, without further ado, guys, I want us to go ahead and move into introducing our panel so that we can get into this heavy, deep discussion as effectively as possible. So with that, brothers, what I'm going to do is just go around and have you introduce yourself. Just give a quick introduction of who you are and kind of where your background is and how it relates to the topic matter at hand, if you could. I'll start with you, Brother Mondale. If you could give a quick introduction of yourself.
Indeed. Thank you so much for having me. Every time I'm in the Black Man Lab, I leave a better man, a better Black man. So I say ashe to that as well. I am Mundell Robinson, founder of the Black Male Voter Project, and that is exactly why I'm in this space. Thank you. And I'll pass it to CJ.
What up, Dale? My name is CJ, Working Family Party lead organizer for criminal justice reform. And it's an honor to be here as well. Coming to names as always for Oscar Kane and for Kendrick Johnson. And I pass it to Taurus, Mr. Williams.
There we go. Thank you. So pleasure, first time in the lab. Such a pleasure to be joining you all. My name is Taurus Williams, and I am with Millennial Civil Rights, which is the Advocacy and Civic Engagement Division of the Perfect Love Foundation. And we too encourage voter efforts. We've been also active on campuses as well through our Free Democracy Tour initiative, where we're registering students, educating them on voting and the importance thereof. And so happy to be joining you all. Thank you.
All right, Brother Horace.
Hello, y'all. Pleasure to be here today. Thank you for having me. My name is Taurus Williams. I'm the founder and managing director of Empowered Applications, technology platform that uses data to simplify how constituents learn about and lobby elected officials from the local to federal levels, and work with advocacy groups and other organizations around grassroots initiatives, and happy to be here.
Brothers,
All right.
thank you all. You brothers I mean, that's probably the shortest of introductions we've ever received. You brothers want some real humility, man. Y'all in like one sentence or two sentences. Normally, folks just go. They like, I was born in 19.
Broken record.
The other thing is they handed it off to each other.
I know that was dope, man. It was like passing the rock, you know, like here. That's a beautiful thing. So, brothers, it just gives us more time to really just lean into this subject and just dig in. The first, question we really wanted to raise in this moment, and with so much going on, man. I mean, and people use this term, and I think sometimes it can be overused, but I feel like this is truly unprecedented times. Like in my life, and then when I talk to my pops, my mother, this COVID, this where we are in the movement is just different. And so with all of that, we have a group of younger people, right? We have millennials and then that next generation, and even some of us who are wondering, where does voting fit in this moment with everything that we have going? What's the significance of voting right now as we prepare for really August 11th is a runoff, and then we've got November elections. But just talk to the young people in particular, man, because I got a question today on a show. Like, young people are wondering if voting is even of any significance anymore. Can it all get done with protest and taking over stuff and what have you? So I just like to hear you all's thoughts on it, and what you're doing. If you all believe that it's significant, what your organization is doing to help bring voting to another level in this time. So let's start with the way you all answered and gave your introduction. So we start with Brother Mondale.
So I'm glad you asked that question. A lot of the time people criticize brothers, especially young brothers, when they ask that question as if historically it's not proper to ask that question, especially by a Black man, when we make up the lower rungs of all markers in society. And it's not because we're lazy. It's not because we don't take care of our kids. It's not because we don't try. It's not because we're trifling. It's because it's by design that we don't exist in most of the spaces we should as it pertains to politics. So here's what I would say. I don't, in our work at the Black Male Voters Project, we don't talk to young brothers or brothers in general about national elections. They're too abstract for us to be worried about. Let's be honest. I'm going to break it down like this. Sociology says there's a hierarchy of needs. Maslow said it. To most brothers who live in life with their backs against the wall on the jagged edges of life, we don't have time to think about voting at the national level, because if you ask most brothers, what they're going to say to you is, my life didn't change under Barack Obama or Donald Trump. Therefore, that's saying that election is not touching me. But what we can say to brothers is, voting is not self-actualization at the top of the pyramid. It's a part of security. If you're thinking about the DAs that are not pressing charges against officers that are killing Black people, that are brutalizing Black communities. It is not self-actualization if you're thinking about a mayor who hires a racist police chief and allows him to create a culture where Black lives don't matter. It is not self-actualization if the school board don't allow you to come to school where your children are attending because you committed a crime when you were 17 and it was a felony offense. So now you can't ever go to a school. So I'm telling people all the time, the reason you vote is because of the local issues that are plaguing your life every day. Every decision you make is affected by somebody who's elected locally. And those issues are how we talk to Black men and how we engage them, young and old, in our community. Because what people don't think about is half of the Black men in America that are already registered to vote have not 5 consecutive elections. That is not a critique of black men. That's a critique of politicians coming through with a transactional experiment saying, come vote for me in 3 months. I'll give you a church fan and fried chicken. None of those sounds like solution to black men. So we keep going the way we go, by and by. That's my answer.
Man, so you gonna drop it like that. And what's deep is this though, is my response earlier was, I would encourage us to ask every brother, do you have someone that is a part of the criminal justice system, right? And say, do you know someone who's been arrested, who's been sentenced? A lot of brothers, myself included, we know brothers who've been arrested. Then the follow-up question is, who was the district attorney? Who was the judge who did the sentencing? And if you didn't like how the system treated them, did you deal with this judge? Did you organize to, And so let's bring it. I love bringing it back to the local. And some people will take great exception with you, Brother Mondale, that their lives haven't changed, whether it was Barack Obama or Trump. Some folks will take great exception, but I think if we look closely, I think you're probably closer to the truth than a farce. So that's the real.
And Malawi, brother, I don't mean disrespect to anybody. I've been doing politics for 20 years. So I know people take great exception, but I would be doing a disservice to black men that live on the margin if I didn't say it that way, because truthfully, these brothers were suffering. I'm talking about, I know brothers who are surviving off less than $12,000 a year, and they try every day to go to work. Right? No doubt. I mean, people are not getting hired because their name is Malawi or Mundell, right? People aren't getting callbacks for jobs. People aren't being allowed to live. People aren't receiving proper health care. So you're right. People take crazy exception to what I say often, but I show up this way, nappy hair and all, just to let people know that you cannot make black men invisible no more.
Hey, bro, appreciate you. Jumping to CJ, my brother. What's up, so?
What's up, man?
Hey, Marty, this CJ is that Midwest brother, man. So, all right, CJ, we got a brother from Wisconsin here, brother Jared. He's from a little town called Racine, I think, in Wisconsin. But he said
Racine is off the chain too.
Come on, CJ.
All right, so to add on to what Mondale said, so I've been for the past 15 years going around the country talking to black men and registering black men to vote. And I've heard every excuse possible as to why they shouldn't vote, right? And I've also heard, we got to stop using the narrative that your ancestors died for your right to vote. Like that narrative isn't working anymore. It doesn't stick. And so when Mondale talks locally, that is something that resonates with young black men. When I have 2 cousins right now who are, one is in the feds and one is in state. And their sentencing is based off of the judges, right? Based off of the district attorneys who didn't look like them, right? And so the conversations that we have, it has to be broken down to a language that they understand, a narrative that they understand. And I don't think that it's all or nothing, right? I think that when I speak to them, I usually tell them that if somebody was trying to kill you or attack you and all you had was a spoon or a cup of water, are you going to say, I'm not going to use that because it's not a gun, right? And so you have to use every tool that's available to you to win, because our enemy and our oppressor 24/7, 365 uses every tool, whether it's through the legal system, whether it's through the prison system, whether it's through entertainment, it was used to destroy us. And so we must be just as efficient and strategic utilizing voting as that tool. And it starts local. But what I've also seen around the country is that we don't have the proper candidates, right? And so there's a couple of things. Funding comes in late to do proper voting drives, and it usually comes around, get out to the vote turns. Then you have organizations who are, their work is voting and registering voting and getting folks out to vote, but they're struggling to keep the lights on and to keep staff because their funding isn't assured, right? And so we don't have a democratic economic engine that pushes us because we're constantly waiting on funds to come in. And the candidates that I've been interviewing through Working Families Party, they're not coming from us, right? They might look like us, But some of the sheriffs that I've talked to, some of the district attorneys that I've talked to, and even some of the judges that I talked to have a European mindset. And so we have to start grooming candidates that have our belief system, who love our people the way that we love our people, and then run them for office. And that's how we can see change.
Brother, we appreciate you. And I think what I want those that are watching to know, the folks that are on, the folks that we consider our brothers, but we also know as experts, they do this work. So this isn't a Mondale and CJ. These brothers aren't just talking like off the top of their head, just, their normal 9 to 5 is to do this. They live this work on a daily basis, moving around among brothers, having conversations, figuring out strategies to engage Black men in voting. And so we just want you all to understand the expertise that we have as a part of this panel. Because, of course, you could pull anybody to say, hey, come talk about voting, but not people who have done the work. And, when you talk about those funding issues, those are real, that we always seen in whatever business. And I talk about nonprofits in the context of being a business. We're undercapitalized, underfunded. So, we're always struggling to try to get our footing so that we can make the impact that we know we need to make. So appreciate you, brothers. Our young gun, what's up? My Georgia State College of Law student, but organizer. Come on in, brother Wynn.
Hey, what's going on? All right, so with voting, one, I agree with everything that's really been said before, especially the part about voting being really taking place and mattering on the local level. What we've, I guess, experienced more or less at the college level and going from universities and doing kind of a educational tour at schools is that a lot of times people don't understand the process and don't understand how politics works in general, don't understand how voting can really make an impact. The other thing they see, to the other gentleman's point, is there seems to be a disconnect between the changes that people really are advocating for, the changes that people really want to see take place, and what they're hearing from candidates. And a lot of times what that breeds is a level of helplessness, not thinking that you can change the very system, that you are the fundamental root of that system operating. And so I think that people, you have to understand that your voice matters, and that you deserve to have a seat at the table. I think that needs to be settled first on an individual level, that your voice matters enough that we need you to contribute through the vote, through the ballot, to have your voice shared at the table. In addition to that, leadership matters, as I think Carrie pointed out. And the beauty about leadership, especially in the political realm, is that if somebody in your area is not expressing your best interests, your views, the things that are really going to help and usher your community forward, then you have the ability to galvanize support, to get a movement surrounded around removing that individual from office. And part of that includes, once again, exercising your right at the ballot and voting. And so it's important to understand who these people are making decisions in your community. It's important to understand how your voice can actually effectuate change. And then here's the other thing. You have to understand that your vote has value. And the reason why that's important is because if you fail to realize that your voice has value and that your vote has value, then you won't understand why so many efforts are aimed at frustrating your ability to vote. They wouldn't be going for your ability to vote if it didn't matter. The reason why a lot of times things continue to stay the same cycle after cycle, election after election, is because people feel as though there's no power in the vote, when in reality, you have the power to really make change and effectuate change. And so think about it. If people are targeting, if they're frustrating efforts, if you have to stand in line for hours at a time, if there aren't enough absentee ballots, if there are inexperienced workers, if there's so many measures being implemented and taken into effect, machines not even working or being tested, there's a reason. There's a method to the madness, and it's part of a larger systemic issue. And if it wasn't valuable, it wouldn't be under attack. So understand the value that you have with the vote. The other thing is where leadership is concerned, and especially where candidates are concerned, at the end of the day, one thing that we have to be mindful of is not disengaging and being careful of that, especially around millennials. What we're seeing is a lot of people disengage because they don't feel as though any candidate is expressing a future that they see themselves into. What does that mean? That means you yourself need to either one, run for office, or two, go ahead and vote for other individuals that you feel like do express the views that you share. I agree wholeheartedly that unfortunately it's not enough to say that people have died for us to have the ability to vote. That's not a catalyst right now. And so we have to be strategic in showing how directly your vote influences your everyday life. And I think that that's something that we've been trying to do more so with the millennial civil rights and some of the actions that we're taking on campuses.
Malawi and Marty, if I may.
Yeah. And
So,
I want you to hit this, Mondale. I want you to hit this too. I want both of y'all to hit this just really quickly. This lesser of two evils. That just keeps resonating. And how do we deal with that? Because at the end of the day, we want to advocate. We're not just the folks that are watching right now aren't just people who are, we're not just convincing them, right? We're trying to give our people tools like you experts have so that we can engage in conversation and try to move some of our young people who are under the influence of our voices, so that when they come with, man, they the same guy or they the same whatever. How do we address that? I wanted to put that in you all's playbook, and then Horace, we're gonna come to you right after Mondale and Tails hit that real quick.
Yeah, I'm actually, look, last month, Mercury was in retrograde. Actually, like 5 or 6 planets were in retrograde. This month, all the black moons must be aligned, because what I was about to say answers is a problem and addressed to the exact question you just asked. Let me say this. I am a firm believer. Joe Biden can't be progressive enough to convince black men to go vote. Donald Trump, he monster to make black men not vote. What I'm saying is white people need to stop spending their resources on the idea that a presidential candidate is going to turn out the black man vote. It's not going to work. What's going to happen, though, is we could take personalities, candidates away completely and talk about issues. When you talk, whenever I engage a young brother, we talk about millennials, but some millennials are 40 years old this year. So those ain't kids no more, right? Those are men that are 1 year younger than me. So, they're 1 in 10 voters. This election cycle will be in a generation behind millennials, right? That's a whole different way of thinking. And if we think millennials are radical and different thinking, you got to think about the generation behind them, right? So what I learned, though, is talking about any candidate is not a smart way to engage those voters, right? The best way is to find out what issues are most important. So that means our talking needs to be more questions about what's important to them, their community, and what they need to feel whole. And from there, build a platform that speaks to those issues. And with those, you can't say once you line up that your number one issue is, black solidarity or criminal justice reform, that those two candidates are the same. Because I can put those issues in front of you and show you where those people stand, and then I'll let you make your own decision. And what we found out is when you put them issues in front of them, you don't have to tell them who to vote for. They automatically find out when you start talking about what's important to them, that the candidates are completely different, and that decision they can make on their own.
Thank you, brother. Tails, you want to jump in on that at all? Or we can pivot to Horace.
I think it's spot on. I think a lot of times having the conversation, a lot of times we tell people what they should care about versus finding out what they already care about. And in doing that research and doing that due diligence, having the conversations, I think that you're better off. And then surrounding, once again, looking at those interests, looking at those issues, and then just seeing who aligns with those primarily. And so I think that's a great strategy as far as really figuring out who to vote for.
And Brother Horace, it sounds like that leads right into what some of the work that you do. And one of the frustrations that I've had is that even when we had an African American at the highest level of office, we just didn't seem to have an agenda to hold him accountable to, right? And we didn't, we just like kind of left it up to get figured out. And we always, even in those circumstances, tend to be the folks don't figure it out for us unless we force it on, this is what it is and this is what it's going to be. But Brother Horace, come on in, man, and give us some of your insight in the work that you do.
Yeah, sure. So what everybody touched on so far, I'm in alignment with it. I'm going to approach this kind of from my world, right? Like I'm a technology guy. And, in being in the technology space, particularly as a service provider, my job is to look at these kinds of circumstances, or my mission, I should say, is to look at these kind of circumstances and figure out how to solve them in a way that is accessible for people. And when I think about, in particular, I think it was the last comment that was made around learning what people need, and then figuring out how to get them represented accordingly. I think one of the things that's interesting about our political process is, you're right, it's very much a talk-act kind of game versus a listen piece. One of the things that I try to do from a technology standpoint is I try to approach politics and civic engagement from a point of context, right? Like, tell me the things that you care about. Tell me the things that impact your life and your community. Tell me those items, and then I will tell you where your segue to impactful civic engagement is. I see voting in particular as a civic engagement activity, but in isolation, it's nowhere near as powerful as it should be. It should be interconnected to, like you said, the accountability measure, right? Like, how do we engage these people once they are in office? It should be integrated into how we support our Black organizations and our Black advocacy groups and all the institutions that have already been established to fight for the causes that we care about. We talk a lot about, an individual and how we connect them directly to elected officials and try to really, get them on pace for that. But one of the even easier ways that I think is low-hanging fruit that we don't push enough as a community is basically looking at our organizations and our institutions almost as like this layer of middle management, right? Like, basically having them, be this means to get people engaged, but being that representative body that, drives that context and the connections that, starts that process. Because if you are someone who is, I use this example. This isn't necessarily our community, because we got bigger things to fight for than bicycles and bike lanes. But here in the city of Atlanta, I remember I had a conversation recently with a council member, and I was talking to him about reporting a local issue, and people will call individually, just out of anger and say, hey, I'm mad about this, and this, right? Like, I want a bike lane, for instance. And if he picks up, the first thing he's gonna say, well, have you ever worked with the Atlanta Bicycle Coalition? And the reason he's sending them there is because that organization provides infrastructure, context. He's got one person or three people over there that he can talk to that represent thousands of folks that are all battling over like the same set of needs. It creates a better opportunity for representation and a better opportunity for more engagement and more leverage in that engagement. The other issue that we have, and this is from the political standpoint, is in terms of how our parties are engaging constituents, particularly young Black men and women. We're being told, we're giving all this high level stuff, right? Like the best, the better of two evils, all this other nonsense, right? But the parties themselves have a more practical set of reasoning for why they want folks to do things. They just don't push that reasoning, because for them to engage people in a detailed manner, it costs them money. They keep things high level so that they can have, what they believe a more broad message. But these young kids, they smart. They have too much access to information, too many inputs that are coming in. So they're not just buying into high level stuff anymore. So that disengages them. So but the real reason, like when you talk about local politics and the interconnectivity between that and your congressional races and your presidential races that we're in right now, the real benefit that you can get from that, and we're not talking about this enough, particularly local elected officials are not doing their job in engaging constituents about this, is when the right people are elected at those levels, it helps enable them to do their job at the local levels. When they need money, they got to go to the feds. Like when they need, you know, when they're looking at model legislation, they're going to our congressional legislators, you know, for example. Like there's a connectivity there that we're not articulating because we believe it's too detailed and too, you know, maybe complex to talk to these young people about, but it's not. Because that's how you create the context that gets them involved and engaged in the process. Because right now, and I'll cut off on this point, the thing to me, you know, with politics in this space, with whether it be federal, local, everything else, is we're dealing with this chicken and egg thing. Like, do we wait on the politicians to come talk to us, or, you know, or do we try to figure out how to build our leverage, right? And then try to make them come to us, you know? And I think that, you know, it's no simple answer, but it's both. I think that we have, you know, our entities and our constituents need to do a better job at, you know, and I say this for my responsibility, my generation, you know, the 40-year-olds and up, we need to do a better job at engaging young people in supporting our organizations and institutions. And then as a byproduct of that, looking at the context of their issues and representing them to our elected officials. And then elected leaders, they need to do a better job at engaging these communities so that they can actually, in doing so from a contextual standpoint, so that they can actually say, here is the issue you are dealing with here. Here's why electing this person helps me serve you. And I think if we focus on those particular areas, we will have a much better pathway to getting people engaged and having an impact. But, you know, that's my perspective on it.
Man, thank you, Horace. I'm going to turn it over to Marty. He has a question, and we have some questions from the Facebook and YouTube. But I have to ask this really quickly, if you all could hit this. What are the Black institutions and organizations, like the example you gave around cycling, right, that our people should be turning to, that are holding that work, that's holding the work of holding elected officials accountable? Because one of the questions that was raised is what happens when a Black elected official, or an elected official, not even Black, just an elected official, switches up midterm, you know, while they're in the middle of their term, they pivot, they change up on you. Could you all just, you know, as succinctly as possible, because I see where we're going. It's 7:08. I know Maurice is like, man, here these boys go. They took off on us. If you could hit it real quick, examples of some of those organizations that we can turn our young people to. And I'm making a distinction, because I know of some of the organizations that have historically done that work. And it's been very difficult for me to influence younger generations to plug into those organizations because of the just the way they look, the way they move, the way they operate, the language they use. Is just, they don't connect with that at all. So if that's probably overstating it, but they just don't connect with it in the ways that our elders have, and even in the way that we have. I mean, we might watch a video or read a book or do something, and it's not exciting, but we know that it's necessary. That's not how a lot of our young people are moving. They want to be engaged in a different kind of way. So I just want to bounce that around, starting with you, Horace, if you have ideas, so that we can just get that out there.
Sure. So first, and I'll try to make it as succinct as possible. One is that succession is an issue. We have to, in this organization right here that you have all have allowed me to participate in, this is one of the solutions, right? Like, it's about connecting those older audiences, our older Black men, with younger Black men, and being intentional about it, right? Because you're right, the discovery process, like when kids come out of school, they're not looking around for them. I can name several Black organizations. Like, I mean, I'll give you one that's out of blue. It's Higher Heights, right? It's a organization that represents Black women who are running for office, and it creates infrastructure for them to get the resources they need. Another one is here, Rep Georgia. It's a Black-owned organization. Here's the thing, there's a lot of Black-owned advocacy groups and organizations at the local level. Rep Georgia helps train people to run for office, right? Owned by a Black woman. I can give you tons of them, but part of that discovery process is also an issue that I'm trying to help solve, through my technology, because people need to be able to connect at a local level, and local organizations are really key too, to essentially help build their leverage when engaging elected officials to get things done in their neighborhood. So that is, kind of where I see both, organizations that, there's a couple that I threw out there, there's several, but then also basically, where some of the issues lie in that discovery process. It is not a really good discovery process to find organizations, which is why I'm working, diligently on that specific issue. But it is, I think it's key. I think it is the lowest hanging fruit to getting young people to build leverage quickly. Because if you can pass an institution down to young people, you give them that power immediately through the brand that has been built from our ancestors and the people they've passed that down to. You're not forcing them to do it themselves from the ground up.
Man, that's beautiful. Some of these folks, they want you to pry the torch out their hand. They like, nah, I'm taking this to the grave,
all they do when they do that, and I'll be quick on this, this particular thing, this is crazy to me. The problem when you don't do that, all you're doing is breeding a competitor. You're breeding another organization that has a redundancy in its mission, that is taking donations and support and volunteers from yours, when you can be building up the infrastructure and leverage of the one you have by proactively going after these young people. That's it. That's all I got.
That's dope. That's dope. And I know, where's the app? Do you have the app?
Yeah. So the app is called Empowered, EMPOWRD. So, you download it basically, and we have, we actually give you organizations you can connect to. We give, we do connect by causes. You tell us causes you care about. If we have a partner organization that cares about that, we'll opt you into them. And then if you put in your address, particularly if you're in Atlanta or the metro area, we pull up every elected leader that represents you, from your local city council member to the president of the United States.
That's dope. I'm downloading that app. CJ, jump.
Just real quick, if you're in Georgia, New Georgia Project is a dope organization. Does amazing work here. And Black Voters Matter does amazing work here as well. But for young people that's listening, if you don't want to join the organization, if you are an activist and you are passionate and you are concerned, then just take it to the streets and get involved. The organizations will find you. It is their job to find you, right? It is our job to find young leaders who care. So just do the work. You may not know where to start, but if it's a protest, if it's a march, if it's getting folks to the polls, just be vocal and trust me, we will find you.
And CJ can say that, man. He found the brother Oscar Kane, man, who, who is an ancestor now, but I think that's the beauty of, one of the beautiful things about CJ is always looking for local organic leadership, because there's a level of authenticity that cannot, you don't make that's in people, and then you just say, hey, let me help with this, and then here's a stage to do the work, to do additional work to help amplify the work. Thank you, brother, for that. Brother Mondale, and then we'll jump to Tails, and then Brother Marty, it's yours. I'm gonna be quiet, man. I'm sorry, these brothers got me fired up. It's been so long since I've been able to rock with
I know you've been missing, huh, bro?
You can feel it. You can feel it. It's like being out on the court, man. You like, they mama's like, it's time to come in. You like, no, ma, I gotta hoop
keep going.
Shut the lights off. Go ahead, Mondale.
Yeah, I don't know if my response is going to be much different than what CJ said as it pertains to
orgs.
Not for an organization to belong to. Do the work that you're passionate about. There's so many Black organizations. I think so often we get tricked to believing when those that are not involved in the work say nobody's doing anything, which is a tragic misstatement, and it's also a blatant lie. We've been doing work since we got here. Songs were means to escape slavery. So don't pretend that we've not been doing this work, or if we ever stop this work. But if you really are looking for mentorship, if you're in the Georgia area, I would say the Black Men Lab is probably ground zero, right? You guys have a track record. Ever since you heard I was coming to your state, Malawi, I've been invited to this space, and I appreciate that. I also think, here's what happens. A lot of the times we send people to organizations, and we forget to consider personalities matter. Right. Mm-hmm. So we forget that people have personality quirks. And then if your personality is not clicking with the people we're sending you to, we've just turned entire movement. And that may be the next Malcolm X we just sent home because he's upset with the person we sent him to mentor him or her. Right. So I would say to these young people, go do what you're passionate about and watch how much action comes around you. Just be true to thyself and watch how it happens. Don't go looking for an organization. It'll find you. They'll find you if they are true to your mission statement. I tell people every day I try to live out Black Male Voters Project mission statement. And that mission statement is to create more Black male super voters. And what I found out was when I started living that way, white money started finding me. Without strings. Like, I don't need this. I'm not going to cowtail for you. My mission statement is my mission statement. And I need to do what I need to do to make sure that Black men are treated whole. And in doing so, I've had a space that, I have a space that is uniquely mine. And I don't have to comb my head in the morning or say, hi, Bob. Well, my beard's not unruly, right? I could just be me. So go do the work, be true to yourself, and watch how it happens.
You can speak in your natural, beautiful voice.
You will hear Eso Spaghettis if you keep letting me talk. I'm telling you now.
As we say, he doesn't have to get nasal, right?
All right, come on, brother Win. Come on in, man.
Hey, similarly, in my position and what we did was we just hit the ground running. And to be honest with you, the way it started with millennial civil rights in general is just a group of friends, us having conversations, talking, knowing that something needed to change, not really knowing where to exactly plug into, but we knew we wanted to do something. And so we hit the ground running. And what worked for us, I think, is, like you said, if people switch up midterm or if people aren't expressing the views that they once expressed that you had an interest in, hold them accountable. And that's how we started gaining a lot of our interest. And the way that we did that was, if you have an issue that you're supporting, and let's say that issue comes up for vote in some type of capacity, then what we would do is we would just highlight, okay, well, who voted for it and who didn't. And that lets you know who's riding with your issue and who's not riding with the issue. And then more people started gravitating to that because it was something so simple that they could understand that, okay, well, I don't think that, let's say, semi-automatic weapons should be on the street right now. Okay, well, who voted for it? Who voted against it? If your issue is a little more complex, just look at the voting records, look at the voting history, and then get that news out. You can use your own network. Social media allows us to organize and mobilize so quickly. In one message, you can reach out to so many people and express an interest or express an issue. And if a legislator is not advocating the way that you voted or wanted them to advocate, then you can share that news instantly and hold people accountable. As well as, a lot of times people don't even call up to the office. Call them directly. You have that right as a citizen to pick up the phone, call them, and you'd be surprised. If a legislator gets 10 calls in a day, then the world is on fire. And they think everything is going on, especially if you're constituents. And so if you have an issue with your elected official, get 10 of your friends, 10 of your friends, and get 5 of their friends, call up there, complain, email, share it on social media, and trust me, you'll start getting some responses. And so I would advise you to just use your immediate sphere of influence. You don't have to wait for an organization. You and your friends already know what matters to you all. So go ahead and put the issue out there and find and in doing that, I think you find like-minded people. And that's what we did. We hit the ground running. We found like-minded people who believed in some of the same interests. And now we joined coalitions. We joined other groups that we're able to effectuate change with that may have more experience and other knowledge that we can glean from. And so I think it's important. Just start where you are and make a difference that way.
Hey, Malawi, Brother Win is on fire. I don't know where you found him at, but that's a diamond right there. You hear me? Hey,
the beauty.
Didn't he say the truth? Go ahead.
The beauty of all of it, right, is the way Let Us Make Man started. We group of 10 men from various faith traditions just said, hey, we've got to reclaim the the gathering, you know, it was called the gathering to reclaim Black manhood. That Black manhood had been hijacked, right? By some folk in hip hop, by different elements of different communities. They just straight took our image and said, this is what it is to be a Black man. And we're saying, no, the hell it ain't. What it is to be a Black man is to be a brother who's responsible for changing and transforming a system that you see oppressing your people. Like, I'm gonna stop there. Go ahead, Marty.
About to go.
I gotta stop.
Hey, Fred, he was getting ready to go again. If you notice, I just been sitting back.
Hey,
he's ready to go again.
He
Bro,
wound up.
brother got me fired up, man. You know, seeing brothers who do this work, who love our people. And, you know, I agree with you so much. People always ask the question, you know, nobody's doing nothing. And it's an insult. What the F are we doing? Every day when I leave the crib and I'm coming home at 9 o'clock at night, when I was doing it when my kids were little, what were we doing? You know, where are the leaders? We right here.
We right here. And I tell people all the time, you don't get to say nobody's doing anything because you haven't been paying attention, because basketball was the #1 issue in your Black life. Right? You don't get to say no one. It's so many lives lost. So many people have high blood pressure because they've been doing this work forever.
Yeah.
As
I say, Brother Mondale, I just said when you hear people making those kind of statements, all I always say is, hey, jump in the pool. Water's fine. You know, get in here. Anybody can do it. You know, anybody can do it. Brothers, y'all have been dropping all kind of dimes, all kind of knowledge, and what I want to make sure that we touch on as well. We touched on it a little bit through the conversation that we've been having, but one of the things that's most important, I think, is missed as we talk about voting, as we talk about changing the paradigm of where politics go, right? And I air quoted politics because not so much about the politics as it's about the policies that are put in place that historically negatively affect our people, right? So one of the things that I looked at, we've been doing some census work, and one of the things that I found that's just startling is, number one, the amount of, from the ages of 18 to 24, the amount of young Black men that, number one, aren't registering with the census, but then also the amount, there's 47% of those folks that are actually registered to vote. Of the 47 people, the 47% that are registered to vote, only 22% are actually voting. Between now, that, think about that, between 18 and 22, young Black men, only 22% are voting. What do we do to move that needle? I think right now, because of the climate of things that are going on, the level of activism that we've seen with young folks in the street, right? They're making change. But I want to talk about how do we get that from making the change in the street to those people moving into positions of leadership, moving into doing what we talked about, coalescing to get a leader to take over and move into some sort of political realm where they can change policy. What are you all's thoughts on that? Brother CJ.
I think that I'll talk about a tool that we use in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We started hosting these forums called Ignite around the country in key cities. And what I would do is I would identify who was the hip hop artist in that city that folks gravitated to based off of the followings. That was the local person. We brought in the journalists. We brought in the top journalists from around the country, from CNN, from Vibe magazine. And the conversation was, how do we change the narrative in music? How do we change the narrative of Black men and voting in journalism? And how do we push the discussion of voting and push the discussion about equality? And we started this in like 2010, planting the seeds in various cities around the country. And so working with Nipsey Hussle before he was able to blow up, and working with D1, identifying these young leaders and these young journalists and these young activists, and educating folks 365 days a year on the importance of education education, only important, all fighting for resources, right? It's a 365 day job. And I think like the census is here, right? So in January, we started meeting about the census and having discussions about the census and about the money that we're going to lose if we don't really go out and participate in the census and fill out those forms. And just like they use voter suppression, they use tactics against the census as well, and educating minorities. So it's like education, it's using culture, creative ways in culture in order to, because our young people identify with technology and culture. So we have to use culture and technology and being creative to educate folks in 365 days. And I think that's how we can, once we start educating more and more people, then I think that the voting will increase, and I think that our movement will grow. And if you can see, like a lot of our folks, the rioting and all of those things, that's to have folks in the streets practicing civil disobedience as well. We need all those tools. But to answer your question, I think that
you're freezing up, CJ.
Yeah, we're losing you, CJ.
You see how the man works when some brother giving fire like that. You want to interrupt all of that knowledge, right? CJ didn't tell you. CJ said he was a fan of Nipsey Hussle, but before Nipsey Hussle was Nipsey Hussle, CJ was working with him, right? I think the brother's back right now. Go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass it because something going on with my internet, but yeah, I'm having a problem. I'm gonna pass it.
All right, we'll come back to you, brother. Brother Horace, what's your thoughts on that as it relates to us? Again, if we're able to effectively get that 18 to 24 demographic, and we are very low. We're the lowest actually, in terms of percentage of young men that are actually voting in that demographic. Black folks are the lowest. What do you think is the key to making that change? If we're able to make that change, one, with them getting them registered with the census, and two, getting them registered to vote and voting. That's very significant, considering especially how many elections that we've had that have been lost by just very few votes, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
So I think everything we're talking about, and in this particular item as well, I think is all part of kind of this comprehensive approach that just needs to be taken in general within our communities. And I think it really goes back down to, and it's not a tomorrow solution, unfortunately. It's more of just an infrastructure, systemic solution. Civic education, particularly at young ages, and how we segue young people into the political process. That entire, all of that is omitted. Right? Like, I mean, if you're not you have your some folks' parents aren't. I'm lucky. My father was heavily politically engaged, so I grew up under that, even though I didn't really like it much when I was younger. And now, look at genetics. But I think that, but a lot of folks, I remember went to go to school to talk about it one time, and they said, well, the problem is that if we tried to incorporate it in curricula here, their parents wouldn't be able to help them because they don't understand this stuff neither. And I'm not saying that's just what that particular principal had told me, but I think that having that segue into engagement as people get older, they learn the importance of it. They see some context, they see how, they can have an impact. And it starts with your class president. It starts with SGA president in high school or in college. Like, it's the same principles, right? And I think that if we were able to connect those dots and transition, say, hey, the way that you voted for your SGA leader in college, they represent the student body to the administration, and your district is basically your college campus. It's like that continuum there, I think, would help create more context around how even local elections work and getting young people engaged, particularly that young age group. And the other part of the issue that we're running into, which is something that I particularly care about, is just looking at the times we're in. Everything is extremely convenient today except that process. If you look at every other part of a young person's life, They can press 2 buttons on a phone and get it done. And this is not one of those processes. And I'm saying there are people, and I believe, there are definitely young people who are really like, who care and who are intentional and are active on campus. Probably, I see them all the time that are just like, they're all into it. But you have some of the passive young folks, that you want to have more activity and be more engaged, but, it's presented to them as this kind of archaic system. And, and as a result of that and all the noise is going on as well, they're disengaged from it. So I think that there is a convenience factor and a modernization factor that needs to play in there. And I think there's an educational factor. And the reason why I'm just looking at these 2 long-term solutions is because we're talking about an age group that is, their segue into adulthood. And how we bring them to their adulthood makes a lot of, plays a large role in what they do once they become 18. Because for me and a lot of other folks, we're usually using our adulthood to build that context into why to be engaged once we're in our 30s and we have a family and we have a house and all that other stuff. But, that's my take on it. It's not a, tomorrow turnaround solution, but I think there is a path to take there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much on that. But Taurus.
I might be a little bit of a loner on this one. I think the bridge, honestly, we have to change the whole perception of politics, I think, and what that narrative looks like. And I say that because, the politics that I saw growing up wasn't a politics that I cared to represent, nor did I feel like I could represent. I didn't feel like I wanted to look like the polished images that I saw. I didn't feel like I wanted to have to talk a particular way to be judged for every move I made, scrutinized, and cared about what everybody thinks. And so largely, I think that, authenticity, letting people know that you can still be who you are, you can still dress how you want to dress, and you can change the perception of politics overall, I think is really the appealing factor of it. And until I think we kind of shift and make politics more appealing, I think it's going to be difficult for people to feel as though they can actually effectuate change or that they're attracted enough to engage in the process. And so I think that getting a message to people that, hey, you don't have to change who you are to be a part of this process. We need you as you are to engage in this process and to really, bring all of you to the table. Meaning that just because you're engaged in politics doesn't mean you have to drop a level of who you are or look and sound differently. You can authentically be who you are, and you can participate and effectuate change. And I think that if we relay that message to younger crowds in general, that we're not asking to change you. We're not asking you to leave you at the door. Come as you are, participate, join in, and let's change the perception of politics. Because largely, I believe that, at least for me personally, the politics I saw was not something that I felt like I could represent authentically.
Sure. And I think right now with, again, the climate of where we are right now, so many young folks being in leadership and doing different movements, that there's probably some realization there that people have that, hey, I can affect change, and I eventually could get into some sort of position of leadership to help make those policy changes. Brother Mondale, did you have anything to add?
Simply that we should not, the perception should not leave this room with all of this black man genius on this call that we are criticizing black men for not voting. That is not what we're doing. And we should also note that something that never is talked about, especially in political space, because it doesn't make money, is the fact that voting is a habit, but what forms that habit? There's one thing that forms that habit, and that's money spent on it, money prioritizing that demographic. And because no one is prioritizing black men, you cannot expect us to be super voters. We know this to be the truth is because if you look at Iowa, where the Democratic Party spends $64 million, $64 billion probably, or so every presidential election or something like that, on a state that is not their demographic. They're not their base. White people do not vote for Democrats in national election. They've won that population since the 70s, yet they still spend more money in Iowa than they do Georgia. How is that the case when black people vote for Democrats more than anybody? Right? So I'm saying is if you're not spending money on black men, it is improper, and also it is a continuation of the status quo to expect us to be super voters. Politics, black men don't participate in politics. Majority of the time, those demographics, those numbers that you just called out, Marty, exist because we've been invisible in the process. We don't see ourselves in policies passed. We don't see our benefit. We don't see ourselves in the candidates being run most of the time. We see how Black candidates get treated, i.e. Stacey Abrams' election stolen from her, Andrew Gillum's in Florida election. So I mean, it is hard to tell people to look at this system as a way as your solutions to your problems when it really hasn't been historically. Here's the silver lining in the cloud, though. I tell people all the time, don't talk about elections as if they're revolution or revolutionary. What's revolutionary is unelecting somebody that don't do what they say they're gonna do. So when a question came from the audience earlier, how do you what do you do when a politician changes themselves halfway through? You unelect them. The problem is we run campaigns that support the status quo. A traditional campaign supports the incumbency. This is why incumbents most of the time win re-elections. What we need to do is recenter the community and the voter, not the candidate. If traditional campaigns were people, they would be sociopaths. They come talk to you 3 months before they need you, only to talk about themselves and how they're going to fix your entire world if you vote from them. That is tragic and it is improper. If we center the voter, we won't have to worry about these candidates who, dress nice, slick with their voice, and don't give us anything. We can fix all our problems by centering the community, because that's where all our problems are.
And
absolutely.
Jump in too on that. Sometimes you don't even have to vote the candidate out. One time, it was a city councilman, Black city councilman, who was voting for a gang ordinance. And so what we did was we organized a town hall in his district, and we brought 500 young people in high school who couldn't vote and who were eligible to vote. We asked the room, how many of you are eligible to vote? Half the room raised their hand. How many of you be eligible to vote by the time this election rolls around? The whole room raised their hand. He withdrew his name from that ordinance, and that demonstrated power, right? So sometimes you don't even have to, you just got to demonstrate power sometimes to show them that we're going to hold you accountable.
Right, absolutely. And with that, I want to make sure that we at Black Man Lab are actually part of a coalition, which is Black Radio United, and they're going to be doing a strong push for getting people registered to vote. And I think that this is something that I brought this up initially because I want to see us regain that power. I want to see us, and it's not about the politicians, it's about us knowing that you as an individual from the age of 18 to 24, for so long, we haven't, what we just talked about, we haven't thought that we had the power, but the reality of it is everybody has the power. What you just talked about, CJ, simply being in the room, right? We want to make sure that people are doing their part to register and utilizing their power to be in a position of leadership. And I don't mean necessarily being a politician. We've seen tons of leaders within our community that aren't politicians that affect change. That's what we want to see going forward. Because this is a very pivotal time for us. There's a website. I want to make sure there's a couple that we put out there, and we'll put them on Black Man Lab as well. ulgatl.org/my-vote-counts. And then also myvotecountsga.com. Those are a couple of places where you can just go and register online. It used to be pretty hard to register. We used to have to go somewhere, get registered, so on and so forth. One of the perks of COVID is it's changed things so that there's some opportunity we can do things electronically. You can do it right from your phone. So I just want to make sure that we have that. We'll put it on the website. We have some questions here that we want to try to touch on. Mal, you want to shoot a couple of them?
Yeah, real quick, brothers. What I'll try to do is just shoot them to one of you and just hit them one at a time. We got a question from my brother Paul Hobson, who is usually always in the room when we were meeting live. But Paul had two questions. One, how do we touch the Congressional Black Caucus and push for our policies? So if anybody has any insight into how do we influence Congressional Black Caucus. And then the other one he asked, was lobbying for certain policies we want to see in place. Like, what are the, how do we go about doing that? Brother Wynn, why don't you jump in? Because I know that you spent a little bit of time down at the Capitol here recently on the lobbying piece, and then anyone who wants to jump in on the Congressional Black Caucus, and then we have another couple of questions, and obviously we're running out of time, but this is very, very powerful. And every Monday we gather a group of brothers together that amaze us and affirm us and remind us of who we are. And you all are doing that again yet this Monday. So thank you. Brother Wynn.
So Paul, great question on lobbying. Some of the things that you can do. So if there's a particular policy that you want to see passed, like for instance, this session, the large talk was about, let's say, hate crime legislation. Say that's something that you want to see passed. Well, you have the right as a citizen to go up during the legislative session in the state of Georgia, which is typically starts in January and ends a couple months later. You have the right to go up there. They hold session every day starting at 10 a.m. and you're able as a citizen to actually sit in on the legislative process, on the session, hear exactly what the legislators are saying. You can even watch when that particular policy or bill goes for a vote. And then you can once again see who exactly voted for it and who didn't vote for it. If something is pending, then following that session, then you can have direct access to the legislators. All of them come down and exit the exact same way. And you can actually ask to speak to a legislator and speak to them directly about an issue that concerns you. And you can speak to either your representative or you can speak to the representative that's sponsoring that policy. And so these are a couple of ways that you can directly lobby by going up to the Capitol. And then you can follow up with an email, follow up with a call, and continue to show up for those meetings. But you have that right as a citizen. Every day you can go up there.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody on the Congressional Black Caucus? How do we connect with the?
Same thing.
Yeah. Get at them. Just go, just holler at them. And as many of you all know, with the passing of Congressman John Lewis, State Senator Taurus Williams has been nominated to replace him on the ballot by the Georgia Democratic Party. So we want to just those who, me personally, I just want to salute the sister, support the sister, and keep pushing forward so she can carry that legacy. So we have another question from Keisha Moore. Keisha asked, not to minimize the importance of the Black male vote in our community, but how can we as Black women like myself support that empowerment as well? So what are ways that we can help see our sisters empower themselves collectively and also in collaboration with Black males?
So I answered Keisha's questions. I'm sorry, brother.
No, go ahead.
I answered Keisha's questions on Facebook because it was a powerful question. And also I wanted the world to see in case we didn't get to it. That question is beautiful. I think it doesn't minimize Black men, not the asking of that question or asking what role sisters have to play. We know that whenever brothers live in household with sisters, they're more likely to be voters. So I think sisters just need to keep showing up the way they show up. They are the most voting demographic in this country. And all we need to do is get to where they are.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. I was gonna even go short in that and say, hey, sister, y'all doing what y'all supposed to be doing. Like y'all, you at the end of the day, if you're talking about kind of the voting bloc that is making the most progress and moving the fastest and gaining the most power and momentum nationwide is Black women.
And so I just want to thank all of you brothers for your time, but what makes this work every Monday at 6:30 is the brothers of Black Man Lab having brothers to reach to, and that you all have invested your lives and your time so that we can call you our brother experts, right? And that's powerful, man. And we just want the world to continue to see that we have our brother experts from, it doesn't matter what the subject is. There's a brother expert on that. I'm gonna have to coin that too, Mondale, all right? Brother expert. So, all right, brother experts. And so we just wanna, again, thank all of you. I also wanted to share, man, I got this dope book, you know. This brother wrote this book called I Will Be Here. And it's a book about fathers, Black men. And the book is dedicated to the importance of fatherhood and upholding the Black family. It's by this brother Daryl Farley, and it's just real cool, man. And I just, you know, this is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to just continue to affirm the best and the work that's being done, and that it oftentimes just isn't amplified and it's just not acknowledged. You know, we have had, as long as we have been going, I think we may have had maybe 3 or 4 news stories about Black Man Lab by mainstream media, maybe 2. And that's not, we're not looking for, you know, that kind of validation, but it just again explains how our story of this work, it doesn't get told, because what sells is Black men being portrayed as the criminal, Black men being portrayed as everything other than what we've seen tonight. So again, thank you, brothers, for being and doing what you do. I'm gonna turn it back over to Marty, and I know I don't see Maurice on here. Maurice Thompson, man. Maurice, these brothers from FAMU, man, man, they be trying to hold this thing down. They like, look, 745 is 745. All right, Maurice.
Well, the plus Molly was when Maurice co-hosted, we went long that day too, so he couldn't say much. So, but no, I want to reiterate what Molly said, man. You brothers, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and all of your insight and intellect, because these are the things that don't get talked about, as Molly said, in the news or anywhere else, in terms of us as Black men holding each other up. And that's what this is about. It's about us holding each other up, and then bringing up those that come behind us, because they're the ones that are really going to be the money shakers and the movers and doing the real things. If we get them, if we help them with whatever information we can download. So thank you so much for doing that. And again, when we go live, when we get back together, because we know that at some point we will definitely bring you all into space again. And you are, as Brother Mondale knows, we take brothers in all the time. We want you to be there in that space and share not just your topic, but whatever else you know about life, right? So one of the things that we do as we wrap every week is we talk about staying linked. And what I want to do is I'm gonna hand it back over to you, Molly, because you were the originator of doing this in the group. So I want you to go ahead and do the link in the chain, and then after that, I want to just make a couple of quick announcements, and then we're done.
All right, brothers. So a Queen Mother, Injiri Alghani, organized, tremendous organizer in the Atlanta metro area and really across the country, would gather us. And when we gathered, she would have us hold hands. So we would normally, if we were in person, we'd be linking arms right now. So let's link up, brothers. Go ahead and unmute yourselves first, so we can do this. So we link up and we say, because we know the importance of us remaining together, and in spite of all of the efforts there has been to break us apart, to break us from our families, to break us from each other, we know the importance of us remaining connected and linked. So we say, if you would repeat after me, I am a link in this chain.
I am a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
I am a link in this chain.
I am a link in
this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
We are links in this chain.
We are links in this chain.
And we won't break here.
And we won't break here.
Ashe.
Ashe. Brothers, again, thank you. Next week, we will have Black Men. Black Man Lab will be about Black men discussing a call to the military. Very interesting topic. We will have that as our topic. Again, those websites that I mentioned, the ulgatl.org. That's where we want to go. We want folks to go there and get registered to vote, as well as My Vote Counts GA. Also, we will be, again, partnering with Black Radio United. Both Mildly and myself at some point will be doing some interviews on Black Radio United. So we will try to keep everybody abreast of that. And we want to keep everybody engaged in terms of getting your census done and getting registered to vote. We know we have power. We want to take that power right now. So, and thank you everybody for listening in. Thank you, gentlemen, for sitting in. We can't thank you enough for all the knowledge that you gave. Mildly, good to have you back in the driver's seat there, Big Cat. Brother Fred, Brother Jared, Brother Maurice, Brother Mark, thank y'all, man. Thank you for everything. And till next week, everybody, much love.
Peace.
Peace.